Good day, parents. Today I'm going to chat to you a bit about a contentious issue, conflict and my teenager. A friend of mine once said she knows why the good Lord made teenagers, because when they are babies they're so cute and cuddly and you want to always keep them with you. But when they start becoming a teenager and they start becoming difficult, you think, can you not just leave my house a bit sooner? And the reason for this is that the logical side of a teenager's brain is not yet completely developed. It's only developed by the age of 26. So very often when I have conflict with my teenager, it's because emotionally they are firing on all 6 cylinders, but logically, rationally, they're not thinking things through. And I think the big thing is that the reason why we have so much conflict with our teenagers is because they don't have the life experience that we do. There's a quote that says very nicely, choose your battles wisely. After all, life isn't measured by how many times you stood up to fight. It's not winning battles that makes you happy, but it's how many times you turned away and chose to look in a better direction. Life is too short to spend it on warring. Fight only the very most important ones and let the rest go. So here are a few guidelines for how I can handle conflict with my teenagers. The first most important thing is, as a family and as parents, we've got to decide what are the not negotiables in our family. In other words, what are our values? What are the things that are so important for us that we need to talk about these things? Because very often when things fall outside of these not negotiables, is it really so important that I have to fight about it? I also need to ask myself, is the relationship or is the problem more important? Because if the problem is important for me to talk about, but in the process I'm damaging my relationship with my teenager, I've got to ask myself what is more important. In other words, do I need to work on my relationship rather than fighting about this issue? As a parent, I've also got to realize that not everything is important. Not everything is so important that I have to fight about it. I also have to realize that conflict takes up time. Precious time that I could be spending on other things. Precious time that I could be spending with my teenager having good times. I also have to see how, when I'm in conflict with my teenager, how I can go for the win-win. In other words, a solution where my teenager is happy and where I am happy. Very often as parents, we want to say to our teenager, you will do this because I said so. And when we do that, the child becomes emotional, the child becomes angry, and it's important for me to understand that I have to acknowledge the emotion of my child. Very often, by just saying something like, I understand that you are frustrated, or it sounds to me as if you are irritated or angry or disappointed. By just acknowledging their emotion, it already makes them feel heard, and it makes them feel that I'm trying to understand what they're going through. It's also important when I see my child is in a mood to ask them, would you like to talk about this? Would you like to have a chat about this? Very often I'm going to get the answer no, but I just have to assure them that I am there. And when we are in conflict, when emotions are getting out of hand, I can even ask them, can we talk about this a bit later? And then to agree on a time which is going to be best for both of us to be able to talk about this. Because when I talk about it, when my emotions are not as intense, it's going to be easier to resolve the issue. And it's also important to communicate to my child that I want to help them solve the problem. So how can we talk together about this, that we can solve the problem? It's also important that when emotions get out of hand and we do lose our temper and we do say things or do things, it's important that we have to acknowledge to ourselves and that we say to our teenagers, in our house, we don't talk like this with each other. That I have these boundaries in place. It's also important that I say to my child that I allow my child to carry the consequences of their actions. If they decide not to do their homework, is it necessary to have a 45-minute argument about why they should do their homework? Maybe I can just leave it. and let them explain to the teacher tomorrow at school why they decided not to do their homework. And I think very often by facing the consequences, they realize what they should take responsibility for. Ephesians 4 verse 26 says, "Go ahead and be angry. You do well to be angry, but don't use your anger as fuel for revenge. Don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry." It's important that when I'm in conflict with my teenager, when emotions have subsided, that we do talk about things, talk it out and say, "It wasn't nice for me what happened today, and I'd like to talk to you about it." It's also important that I assure my child that I still love them. Although we've had conflict, although we disagreed about something, that I can say to them, "I still love you and I still accept you for who you are." So I hope today you've been able to get a few guidelines on how to handle your teenagers and when you've got differing opinions about things. And remember, a teenager always thinks they're right. Very often they are not right, but sometimes they are right. And I think we as parents sometimes just have to be able to listen to them as well. Thank you very much.